Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today's Tuesday, November the 25th, and thanks for being along. I saw we had kind of a crowd gathering over on YouTube. We've got our Rumble audience live as usual, and I'm grateful for all of you. It's Thanksgiving week, and I'm thankful that you show up and listen to what we have to say here. I've shared this before, and I'm going to share it again. One of the things that this podcast offers me the opportunity to do is take, let's call it a bow and arrow, because I don't think it's as powerful as a firearm, but I get to take my little bow and that hand-whittled arrow that we've put together. I get to draw it back on a pretty decent little drawstring. Let's call it like a 60-pound recurve draw. And I get to send that arrow directly into the heart of the FBI's 7th floor management. Because whether they know it or not, we know what they're doing. Some of us do. And a few of us don't work for a major news publication. We're completely independent, like I am right here. And I can say whatever the hell I want. And I'm going to say whatever the hell I want. And I'm going to share names of people who are involved in shenanigans, shall we say, to do it in a nice way. It's nice to see some folks talking about it on more of the mainstream outlets, even if they're even more fringe than the traditional legacy media. It's starting to come out there. We're going to get a little bit further into that. This pipe bomb story is not going to go away. Unfortunately, one of my buddies told me that when FBI Director Patel was confirmed that was going to be the end of my FBI commentary, and that would have been great. I would have loved it if I had no more FBI commentary. We could just talk about what's going on with Mark Kelly. We could talk about some fun games where people who were involved in deep state actions were prosecuted, and we could do some reading of the indictments and talk about how strong they were and what a great job that they were doing and how everybody was going to get held accountable and that there would be justice for all. And that's not what happened. Not even close to what happened. We're going to say some names. I'm going to give you some tuned attention span for future interviews. And I'm going to tell you that what's kind of nice to see is that people who are actually closer to a position of authority than I'm in are starting to pick up on this. They're starting to see it. They're reading with the critical eye. They're listening with the same ear that I've been kind of tuning this audience to, so that when people say specific things, that we can learn that they are, in fact, saying what they mean. Getting briefed is not the same as reading a file. Having someone tell you what's going on when that person is of questionable credulity and not necessarily someone who has your best interests at heart, that should matter to you. You should care. You should look a little further. You should be the skeptic that we always advise here. So we're going to have a lot of fun with that today, because last night, Catherine Herridge put out a sit-down interview with Kash Patel, which is the second sit-down interview he's done, which is trying to cover and spin and take ownership of two major catastrophic lying situations the FBI has been involved in the last, let's call it, year or so. One of them was the almost assassination of Donald Trump, and the reveal that apparently the guy who was a 20-year-old kid completely acted alone. He self-radicalized by himself on the internet with no additional help, and then he concocted a plan and climbed up and evaded Secret Service. And I always told you, there's a small possibility that the myth of competency says that we thought if anybody went up against the Secret Service that they would immediately be killed and they would never get close. But the real possibility also exists that so many overlapping failures would have to be the worst tolerance stacking situation ever, or something else was at play. And what we are being told right now, again, reaffirmed, is that Donald Trump is totally satisfied. The FBI did all the things right. And so for all of the talking of the guys who went in there prior to being in this bureau, they were wrong before. I haven't heard him say it, but did any of these guys ever come out and say, hey, by the way, all of my criticisms of the previous FBI were BS because these are just great, hardworking Americans. They're awesome. And they always did everything right. That's essentially what they're saying. So we've got a sit-down interview that we're going to play some pieces from, and I'm going to clip it up so that you don't have to sit through 30 minutes. I'm going to give you like 5 or 6 minutes of it. And then another sit-down with Thomas Massie. You guys know I'm a fan of Massie. He's also kind of long-winded, as is my friend Steve Baker, which is great if you want to sit down for 90 minutes and listen to a very long-winded explanation. I pulled out a couple of, what do they like to call them?
Morris gave up a big nugget.
I pulled out a couple of big nuggets for you, and we're going to actually sort of uncover those nuggets, polish them up into a diamond so you can actually understand very crystal clear what's going on. That's where we're going today. I hope you stick around for it because we're going to have a lot of fun with it. And then we're also going to start off with a sponsor read as we are wont to do. This leading sponsor is our friends over at Cove Pure. Their website is covepure.com/Kyle. Cove, C-O-V-E, pure.com/Kyle. Let's just talk about it real quick. If you do not have water filtration, you are probably consuming garbage out of your tap waters. Like everything government does, it's mediocre. So there is some standard, but that standard is probably not the standard you'd want to keep up with. The best thing about the Cove Pure is that it is a lab certified system that removes 99.9% of contaminants from your water. That's going to be things like PFAs, pharmaceuticals, fluoride, lead, arsenic, just all the junk that gets added or gets seeped in there. If you lived like I did on a military base, you find out suddenly that you had like 8x the amount of arsenic you were supposed to be drinking because they had let a bunch of jet fuel fall into the water table. Anything can happen. Who knows where it happens after the fact if it goes into these pipes and so on. So if you guys want something that is healthy for you and regular water, that's a big piece. But the other piece of it for you is that it actually tastes good. My water stinks like sulfur. I don't know why it's allowed. I've called about it. There's nothing we can do. So what do? We put it into water filtration, and we don't have to deal with that. A couple of other really nice things about this unit that's different than others. You've got presets for the size. So if you got little kids who don't know how to do it, or maybe you just want to be able to push a button and get a cup of tea, and it's going to punch out hot water. That's really nice. You can select the temperature and you can select the size. And so we have an 11-ounce setting for our kids who have 13-ounce water bottles because they never empty them all the way, and I don't want them to overflow. And when you have a 6-year-old pushing a button, you don't want to think about it. Really nice. It's a countertop unit that you don't have to like wire in or plug in or do anything else. So if that's something that might be interesting to you, you guys should check them out right now. They're doing $250 off for the Christmas holiday discount. Again, covepure.com/KYLE. It's a great gift. It's a great gift for yourself. You might want to take it with you. If you got an RV, like my folks do right now, maybe you need something that's going to travel with you and give you good water because you don't know what you're going to be getting out of the taps wherever you go. In any case, check all this stuff out at covepure.com/KYLE. Make a great decision, make a great gift, and we thank them for their sponsorship. We're grateful for them because it is Thanksgiving. We're grateful and thankful for people that support our program. All right, let's get into today's program starting now. I'm going to say that not everybody is grateful or thankful on this morning. And one of the people who seems the least grateful is this guy on the screen. That is a dour looking picture of Senator Mark Kelly. In the ongoing saga of make sure you resist an unlawful order, no idea what that unlawful order would be, and having former intel members and former military service members go out there and tape this sort of bizarre warning to the troops, apparently, because they're so in love with people following the Constitution, you get kind of an interesting development. The Pentagon is now going to investigate this man. It turns out, if you're a former service member, especially if you're a former officer, you can be recalled to active duty and then court-martialed if you somehow have gotten yourself in hot water. CBS News is reporting the Pentagon is conducting a review of the misconduct allegations against Democratic Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona. He's a former U.S. Navy captain. For those of us that were in the other part of the military where captain is an an O3, that is not the case. A captain is the equivalent to a colonel, if my memory serves, is a significantly higher. Was it like 06? I think it's like lieutenant commander, then captain, something like that. In any case, the Navy has weird ranks. And if you guys know anything about being on a Navy base as a non-Navy person, we don't know what your ranks are. We don't understand what they mean. They're completely mysterious to us who are in the Army, the Marine Corps, in the Air Force, I guess the Space Force now too, even in the Coast Guard. Coast Guard has weird ranks too. But I don't know what an eagle past a star with a moon and a bunch of lines means, and neither do you, except the Navy, which pretends to know. Also, just a weird aside here. Navy people, why is it that when we ask what your rank is, you always tell us what your job is too? And then we're supposed to like suss it out. You're like, oh, like I'm a maintenance petty officer, third class maintainer, wrench turner person. It's like, is that an officer? I just want to know if I'm supposed to salute you or if I'm supposed to give you a high five. All All right. Kelly was among one of the groups of lawmakers which released a video last week calling for service members and members of the intelligence community to refuse illegal orders. This is actually going to dovetail nicely into what we're talking about. They don't need to be told this. They get training on this. You get specific, specialized training when you are in a branch of government. Almost everybody gets it, basic training. And then when you are old enough, or maybe you have enough education or enough job experience where you can go and work in one of these intel services, theoretically, you're actually supposed to know what an unlawful order would look like. Illegal, immoral, unethical, unconstitutional, right? You're supposed to be able to use discernment. In theory, that's why people are paid what they are paid in federal law enforcement. It's a sense of discernment. They can look at things on its face and decide whether this is appropriate or not. And then, because you get paid really well every 2 weeks, you're supposed to build up that little cushion, that financial responsibility, which is one of the things they look for when they give you a security clearance. And you're supposed to say no if there is an illegal, unlawful, or immoral requirement being put on you. I was specifically trained that way when I was at the FBI Academy. It was very weird to me that you have members of the service coming out and saying it, and all these people had their mouths absolutely silent. They said nothing when there was a requirement for testing using an emergency use authorization device. This was the COVID-19 swabs, all of which were approved under EUA. None of them could be compelled, and yet all of us that were in that scenario, we had to decide whether or not we were going to lose our job over something that they couldn't legally ask us to do, and yet they did it anyway. This seems really problematic. So all these people have lost all credibility with me, and so I have no sympathy if they decide to call him back to active duty. I think there is one real interesting question. If you are on active duty, I do not understand how you can be a partisan office holder. And so I don't know if that would actually kick him out of the Senate. That's an interesting thing to explore. On Monday, there was a social media post. The Pentagon said it received serious allegations of misconduct against him and that a thorough review of these allegations had been initiated to determine further actions, which could include a recall to active duty for court-martial proceedings or administrative measures. And the reason that they are actually citing is that everybody would look at this person as a former officer who's resting on the credentials of being a former officer and say, you basically cited your credentials, you appealed to authority, and that authority was your previous commissioned officer status. And if you're doing that, then you're basically trying to throw on the jacket, throw on the epaulets, and you are trying to regain and speak as an authoritative member, former officer in the military. We'll see how that goes. I think it's kind of interesting. The Trump administration has tried a couple of these novel approaches, and so far they've kind of been getting the goose egg. We also found out yesterday, and I didn't go and pull a specific story for it because I just don't think it's that exciting. It was one of the lead stories is that Jim Comey's prosecution was thrown out by a judge, as was Letitia James. And the claim is that the United States attorney, who was appointed as an interim or an acting, and it's kind of like that's the question of whether or not you can have back-to-back acting appointments of a United States attorney, whether that was brought properly or not. And so I told you guys Jim Comey was going to get good lawyers. And I told you that it probably wasn't going to go anywhere. They brought some weakness to it. So his perjury case has currently been thrown out. It is now being appealed above the district judge to see whether or not this was a procedural issue that should in fact result in the indictment being tossed. And just so you know, they've got 6 more months to bring it. The criminal statute, Title 18, allows them at least 60 days if there's a certain condition met, or 6 months if another. They also can wait until another grand jury is impaneled if that's not something that will be scheduled. There's some small districts where that's an issue. Probably not an issue in EDVA, Eastern District of Virginia. So they're going to rebring this case at some point. It's going to get drawn out forever. Maybe the process is the punishment. Maybe that's the goal. But what we are going to see is Jim Comey is currently off the hook. And as some of you are accurately pointing out in our chat this morning, Mike Davis, the guy who runs the Article 3 project, who said lawyer up MFer, is once again sort of an empty barrel, right? The empty barrel makes the most noise. They're over there beating on this barrel, which resonates really good and it sounds really exciting. How many strikeouts have we seen in the deep state prosecutions? Right now, they're basically 1 for 3, and they've only brought 3. James will probably have to deal with her problem soon enough. Comey may never have to deal with it. There's some issues with the grand jury material, and it sounds like that may actually get destroyed, and so he's going to get away. I think Chris Wray is also going to have no problems, and so we're going to be left with prosecuting John Bolton's mustache. Interestingly enough, the lawsuit that was filed against me, for those of you who are curious, was filed on a episode of our podcast, which was entitled Desperate FBI Director Digs Deep into John Bolton's Mustache, because it was right then when they went for that first Hail Mary. We have to indict someone. We got to do something. We've struck out on all the things that we said that we would be successful on. So let's go after John Bolton's mustache for classified documents. That's the only thing that they can currently hang their hat on. And I just think it's funny because even the name of that episode is sort of that sarcastic nature by which I often see these stories. It's hard for me to get excited and get behind any team that doesn't actually post wins. I'm not a sports ball guy anymore, but I know that if I was cheering on a team that basically lost all the time, I'm thinking of the Indians from the show Major League. If that was my team, the Indians from Major League, they just lost and lost and lost. And like whenever somebody got an opportunity to do something, they would lose. It would be demoralizing. That's kind of why people are feeling bad right now. I've spoken to many friends and listeners of the show. I've talked to just complete random strangers. And I keep getting the sense that more people are in a state of unease about the current status of our nation right now than I've ever seen. And that doesn't mean that we're walking outside and like there's chaos or violence in the streets or that there's danger, but there's this sense that everything is not all right. That we've been lied to, that we've been swindled, that we have been for a long time. More and more people are aware of it. And they're just going, how is it that we are in such a precarious position and yet nobody in power seems to be acting as though this is it? Why do we feel like that? And I think the answer is because the status quo is undefeated. And if you live in Washington, D.C., there is no major change. They're moving the needle a couple inches to one side or the other, but it really doesn't change the way that the teeter-totter falls down. If we believe in the concept of a uniparty, and I'm going to put this out there as something for you guys to debate on your own as well. If we actually believe that there is such a thing, a uniparty, I've heard Tom Massie say it. I've heard other members of Trump's administration talk about a quote unquote uniparty, but then we try to act like it's not, like you're somehow going to vote your way out of it. And I think more people are I think they are fatigued on the idea that you can sell me hope when we look and realize that there is no meaningful substantive change. We have a Speaker of the House who came in under one specific particular plan of action. We will give you single issue appropriations bills. That seems like it would save all the problems. We wouldn't have all the bloat and the BS and all the pork and all the other nonsense if we could just get a single vote, yay or nay, on individual departments and policies inside the federal government. And we can't do it. And why can't we do it? They don't give you an argument. They just act like they never said that thing ever. Like it just goes away. It blows my mind that we think that we're going to be able to vote the way out of it when you've put the guys in who talked the toughest for the most number of years. And the reaction is identical to putting in the worst guy. I don't know the difference between having a Pam Bondi or having a Merrick Garland at this point. I don't know the difference between having a Kash Patel who for years said that they were going to solve the problem, who accurately was stating what the problem was, and a Chris Wray who just kept his mouth shut, wore a suit, and looked like a grown-up, and he lied like a lawyer. It doesn't mean that we should give up. It just means that I don't think that this problem is solvable by Washington. And here's the real issue that I see at the mere core of it. And this may be something for us to reflect on another time. Maybe I can get Steve Friend to bash around with me. Republicans act like the solution to a government problem is government. And Democrats act like the solution to any problem is government. And so if both parties have determined that the solution to the problems that we have, either in government or out of government in society, is government, then there is no conservative option that is currently being fielded. Nobody seems to put on the table, what if we just broke that or turned it all off? You guys have watched some of the tech issues that we've experienced on this program for years now. Some of them are really strange. Some of them are my fault. I'm sure of it. Like, I'm human. And these machines are being operated the way they're supposed to, except when they're not. And what's the solution that we always start with? Disconnect everything and reconnect it. This country so desperately needs a hard reset, and it needs to go back a long ways. But instead, and I've used this analogy before, we have people that keep getting into office and they act exactly like the person before them did, which is that they are the button pushers every whatever it is, 109 minutes, whatever that thing was in the show Lost, where the Dharma Initiative said, if you don't push the button, the world ends. And so they just keep passing the budget and they keep making sure that we are funding the most illogical and silly named government agencies with all of our money. And then the Trump administration comes out and does the same thing. They just go, hey, what would be the best solution? What if we gave you $2,000? What if we gave you tariff revenues as a rebate for being so cool and voting for us? And by the way, if you're an unwed mother, you're going to get a Trump savings account for your baby. We're going to take money from everybody that's had a baby that's not you, and then we're going to put it into an account in the most illogical way possible. And so now we're going to create a new social security net for 0 to 18-year-olds, but only for 3 years. What if we gave you money inefficiently? Would that make you be interested? And people go like, maybe. Yeah, sure. Okay. That's what I want. How many people are just buying that? They're like, oh, well, as long as the government's giving me money, without a single thought as to where does it come from. And we played you some stuff yesterday, which is very clear. They know it's going to be inflationary. They're just hoping that you're too dumb to know. And so do we have a fearless media that's out there that's keeping track of this and pushing back? Do we? We do not. This story really got my goat yesterday, and I want to share it with you. It's in the New York Times, which is something many of you do not read. But I found that my father-in-law is well-versed on the discrepancies and the foibles of the FBI director because it is being covered by the New York Times. And so there are people who don't agree with me that do read this. And I wonder what they take from this story. And I wonder what you take as well. New York Times, 2 men, 1 identity, both paid the price. This would be a moral equivalency, I think. Let's get into the story because it's really galling once you get there. Thousands of undocumented workers rely on fraudulent social security numbers. One of them belonged to Dan Kluver. I'm going to say that one more time. Thousands of undocumented workers, aka illegal aliens, rely on fraudulent social security numbers, aka identity theft. So people who came here illegally must, in fact, commit crimes with real victims. One of those victims is Dan Kluver. Is that the point of this particular article? No, it's not. Dan Kluver saw police lights flashing in his rearview mirror last year, and he eased up his car onto the shoulder, thinking that there had been some kind of mistake. He'd spent 4 decades in rural Minnesota without ever getting in trouble. He prided himself on a life built around dependability and routine, working in the same factory where his father once did, and spending his weekends coaching baseball and teaching Sunday school. He'd never fired a gun, smoked a cigarette, missed a payment, or been arrested. I don't know why never firing a gun is somehow something that is considered to be good. I actually think that's probably a strike against Mr. Kluver here. But never smoked a cigarette, never missed a payment, never been arrested. All right, so he's just a clean, regular dude. License and registration, said the officer, and Kluver, 42, handed them over and waited for the officer to get back to his patrol car. He listened to the church bells that rang every hour, and he watched the sun reflect on the grain silos in the town of Olivia, where he knew most of the 2,400 residents, including the police officer. Is everything all right? Kluver asked. It's strange, but it looks like your license has been suspended. You've got a driver's license with some issues down in Missouri. Uh-oh. What? I've barely even been to Missouri. How's that possible? The officer had no answers, but he feared that he might know what happened. Over the years, there had been signs that Kluver had noticed that something wasn't right. Stray letters about wages earned in unfamiliar towns and collection notices for debt that wasn't his. By the way, folks, I've had this exact same experience. Somebody worked under my social security number at a pizza place in Arizona and at some other like tire shop in Utah. This is a real problem when you come into the workforce and you realize that somebody is out there running out your credit and they're running out fake debt under your name. And it's not immediately obvious what you do about this problem. Kluver tried to untangle this mess several times by hiring a tax specialist and driving to government offices across the state only to run into the same bureaucratic dead ends. The problem was bigger than unpaid taxes. Somebody impersonating him, moving through the world as Dan Kluver, was building a life in his name with a government-issued ID. How can that happen in this country? It turns out it's actually not that hard. His case was one version of a problem that's been spreading across the country for years. And it turns out the New York Times is quite sympathetic to this. The government estimates as many as 1 million undocumented aliens are using fraudulent or stolen social security numbers, quote, a survival tactic used to pass background checks and get jobs. Well, you know, you don't need a survival tactic when you are actually doing things as you are required to do them, which means that you came here legally. You don't have to steal from someone else, which is what they're doing. You don't have to defraud somebody else, which is what they're doing. The numbers are skimmed from data breaches. Oh, we talk about that on the show sometimes, don't we? Sold in black markets for as little as $150 or handed out in border towns by human smugglers. Many numbers connect back to U.S. citizens, dead people, Puerto Ricans whose numbers easily circulate across the mainland. But thousands of others belong to people like Dan Kluver, Americans whose names and identities are no longer theirs. There he is. There's the man. He's on the screen right there. He lives in rural Minnesota, and he has for decades, but his number is being used by some illegal a-hole. And the New York Times is very sympathetic to the person that had to steal his information. The police officer sent Kluver home with a warning, sifted through the files. He went to look for another clue. His social security card was locked safely away with the birth certificate for their 3 children. He'd never been robbed. He'd never lost a wallet, but there was his number printed on a W-2 form from a leather factory in a town he'd never visited. He traced 15 years of records and found more tax documents listing unfamiliar jobs, a cement plant in Kansas, a paper mill in Tennessee, a construction company in Ohio, a cereal factory in Nebraska, and a dog food plant in Missouri. His wife said, how do they think you're getting around to all these places? Wouldn't that make sense? Imagine if we had a functional governmental system that would actually be able to go and look and say, you know, it's completely illogical that a man would be working jobs in all these different places in 1 year. The police officer, so they've lost control. I've lost control, and they don't know who I am. Some years ago, the other Dan Kluver had earned more than his own salary as a local sugar beet factory, which pushed the total income under his Social Security into a higher tax bracket. So he started having debt because he was paying taxes on what he actually earned, and the other guy was not. Twice he contacted law enforcement, filed an identity theft report with the federal government, where it landed in a pile of tens of thousands of similar reports each year, and he waited for relief as the IRS docked his annual tax returns and garnished a few of his paychecks, costing him thousands of dollars. This is not a victimless crime. And it never has been. And it's amazing that the people on the left continue to defend it. After a few months before their wedding in 2012, Christy decided to pay off the total balance of not their debt, emptying her savings account and sending in a check for $6,000. Their relief lasted into the next tax season when they got a new bill, this one for $22,000. How many Americans have dealt with this? How many of you have dealt with this? How is this acceptable that some faceless governmental system, which is really, really happy to run you down and pull money right out of your bank account, but it cannot actually protect you from the people that came here illegally and are using your stuff? The story goes on. And it's very sympathetic. It's sympathetic to the guys who did it, the people who were using this ID. And that's the thing that blows my mind. President Trump was promoting Operation Take Back America, a nationwide campaign to root out undocumented workers using fake IDs. Kluver, a registered Republican, rarely paid attention to politics, but he began to wonder if his case might be finally a priority, if he could reclaim what belonged to him. And a few weeks after being pulled over, he drove to the police station in Olivia to submit another affidavit about identity theft. Someone has stolen my ID for working purposes. It's been happening for 15 years. Why does this man who pays his taxes have to beg for someone to do the job that should have been done. And this is why people are pissed. And this is why less people are going to be sympathetic. Because for every one American citizen who stopped, who has a driver's license and is Hispanic, yeah, that's a bummer. Would you be willing to endure that so they can get rid of the people that screwed up this man's life and took tens of thousands of dollars out of his pocket and his wife like emptied her savings account? Can we agree that that's actually probably worse than you being stopped and asked questions by law enforcement when you legally are allowed to be here? I don't know if you guys have ever been detained by law enforcement, but I have. I was detained when I was in the military, and it was dumb. And I've been detained other times as well, and it was equally dumb. Sometimes my fault, sometimes not. I'm not like a complete saint in this arena. And yet, it's like at the end of the day, I walked free because I didn't do anything that was worthy of being arrested. They let me out. And then they wrote, one time I had a letter put in my file when I was in the military, and they said, this guy owned guns. And they were secured, but they weren't secured in the way that we thought they should be secured. And so he violated a standing order. And so here is a letter of censure, or whatever the heck it was, letter of reprimand, an LOR. And at the same time, they wrote me a letter of commendation because I'd been doing such a good job for taking care of guys that was like way above my pay grade. And that was kind of a wash. It's like, okay, well, that was inconvenient, but I'm willing to have that inconvenience because law and order should mean something. And sometimes the system takes a little while to work out. As long as the process isn't designed to be the specific punishment, which I don't think it is in the case of immigration law. But the New York Times is not worried about that. They're worried about whether or not this poor guy, Perez Bravo. Well, I mean, what about Vincent Trujillo and Ronaldo Guerra? What about all the people who were out there? They're immigrants from Guatemala and Mexico and Venezuela, and they're trying to come to the Americas, and they want to have a nice life. What about those people? They have to answer to somebody else's name because they know what they're doing is wrong. They know what they're doing is illegal. They have to know. And we're going to cry about them? They came here when they were 16 to try to help earn money. They hiked through the Guatemalan mountains and highlands. I don't give a shit. You can't come to the country without coming in properly. Look what you've done to some poor man with 3 kids out in Minnesota that's never even left his freaking town. I mean, I don't know many people who do that, who don't go anywhere, who have lived in the same place, who work the same job as their fathers. That seems like a very antique version of America. And if that guy is potentially susceptible to it and he doesn't go anywhere, what on earth are we doing here? I got to show you this too. This is the poor guy. This is the sympathetic photo of Romeo Perez Bravo, who spent his entire adult life working under borrowed identities. And by borrowed, he means stolen. This is why the New York Times is not going to get sympathy. This is why there are people who listen to this and I don't care what they think. He was deported multiple times. He had a string of DUIs. That means he drove around here illegally while hammered and put people's lives in danger. And he got deported in 2005, 2008, and 2009. And he got a sympathetic, like, fluff piece written by the New York Times of all things. These borrowed identities are felonies. They're all felony identity theft. And they have an actual victim. How crazy is that? Like millions of undocumented immigrants, he paid federal and state taxes, which were automatically deducted. Apparently, they freaking weren't, though, because they bumped up another man's income tax bracket to the point where he was getting hit with it. Why didn't it get hit from the illegals tax as they were filing on this? It's insane. You've created a system. The Social Security number was never even meant for ID. Go look at your Social Security card. It actually says not a valid ID on it. The document is actually written and the usage rules. And we've turned around and we've done all the worst things. And the worst reason is because we have ceded authority to a federal government that now gets to collect taxes. Number one, they get the first crack at your paycheck. So how are you even a citizen? You're a subject. It's the same story as if you don't pay your property taxes. They'll come take your house for $47. There were stories about this happening during the COVID shutdowns. People losing their houses over 2-digit dollar amounts because they didn't pay the state what they were owed, and they auctioned off some poor old lady's house who didn't have enough money. And there's sympathetic articles being written in the New York Times. I don't get it. Like I said, I think this country is cooked because of these stories alone, simply because some people cannot process that there is like just a straight up right and wrong, and degrees of wrong still are wrong. That seems pretty straightforward. And they act like, well, it's our burden to carry this. Well, I can pretty much tell you that guy, this poor man, Daniel Daniel Kluver, I bet you he's not particularly sympathetic to the people who took his identity and thousands of dollars. It'd be hard for you to have a lot of forgiveness in your heart when that was the case. And imagine like just the concern. It's always back there. I remember when I found out that people were working under my security number, social security number, it was the same thing. It was like, when is this going to pop up next? When am I going to deal with some crazy person putting something on my record that I'm going to get pulled over randomly because I got a taillight out on my ancient ass, 91 F-250, and the cop is going to find out that I'm wanted for some crime somewhere because somebody's been running around with my license in another state that I've never lived in. And the wild thing is I lived all over the place. So it's plausible that I could have been there. I mean, it'd be much harder for me to argue than the guy who lived in the town his whole life. This is why people don't feel like their country was there. And that's why they wanted this Make America Great Again attitude. That's why this was a winning slogan. The problem is that it's just not happening. You can't tell me America first and then say, well, also, but we want to give billions of dollars to Argentina, and we're thinking about starting a war with Venezuela, and we're going to welcome Saudi Arabia, and we need a Qatari Air Force base, and we're going to sell a bunch of weapon systems to the Qataris, and we're going to give them training up in Mountain Home, Idaho. People just go, how is that us first? Thought we were going to take care of our problem. The first problem would be get all the people that are stealing from us, because that's what it is, out of the country. Priority 1, clean up your house. Priority 2, clean up your front yard. Priority 3, maybe you can help out your neighbor. If you are starving and you are unable to physically lift your arms, you're not going to be much use to anybody. There is a circle. There's a circle of things that you can influence, and they are a bullseye, and you got to handle the things closest to you first. And we thought that Donald Trump was running on that. It's wild to me that that was not the case. And this is going to be the argument that I make when we look at some of the really dangerous things. If you want to clean up your house, how about the people who are meant to make sure that things are going well in your house, your federal investigative agencies, your federal law enforcement? How about making sure that they are doing the things that they promised, which should be just a no-brainer day one task? It's like, yep, we're going to go clean these problems up. That has not been the case, folks. It has not been. And so, it makes me feel kind of like it's kind of a dismal feeling. And it's shared by a lot of people, retirees, people who worked in government, people who are currently working in government, people who are working in private sector that are seeing this very unstable moment when the bad guys seem to get the better end of the break. When the New York Times will write a sympathetic article about you, an identity thief, a drunk driving asshole who's been running around in my country and kicked out of it multiple times, and you keep breaking back in, and we're supposed to feel bad about it because you spent your whole life breaking the law here? Throw him out of the freaking plane at this point. It's like, well, apparently it didn't take when we deported him multiple times. Now we're going to deport him with a parachute, and we're just going to see where he lands because we don't care. Because he apparently doesn't care what we think either. That may not be the nicest sentiment, but I bet you get a whole lot of people to sign up for that program. How many of us would be the jump master on that plane? I'll do it. I have no jump master experience, but I'm happy to play that game. It's just sickening. That's why people are fed up. And you're not going to get sympathy. You're going to have anger, and it's going to boil over. And this is the whole problem that you heard Alex Jones talk about for years. The concept of the Podesta plan is you got some people that are crying about the illegals, and you got some people that are so fed up because they were just regular people wanting to be left alone and found out that even things that shouldn't have ever bothered them, like the southern border, should not have affected a man who lives in a northern Midwestern town with 2,400 people in it. It should never have even affected him. And yet it did. And it's because of policy. And it's because of the focus is not on the thing that we heard. We all heard one thing. We believed it meant something. It turns out that that's not the focus. All right. Since we've been talking about having your identity stolen, this is a good time to talk about my buddies over at Patriot Protect. They constantly are warning us about this. They support our program because of it. Patriot-protect.com/Kyle would normally be the way that you go about this, but they are running an extra special deal right now at Patriot Protect. And the deal is if you use BF for Black Friday 50, you'll get half off anything that you guys want to buy from them. It looks like I just threw out my icon, which I had on the screen. There was a big Google breach. This is a Gmail breach that happened of late. And if you guys are if you are interested in reading about Google breach and data breaches, yeah, you could lose your passwords and your logins. But the key is that it puts you on the data broker websites. And the data broker websites, these people search websites, is where some of these folks can find your data. Then they can use your name, your address, your email, and they can go out and find you on the dark web and find out, oh, well, this is a pretty suitable match here. And they can buy your stuff. You heard it. As little as $150 to wreck your credit, to wreck your financial history. They'll buy your access to some of this other stuff for way cheaper than that. It costs like pennies on the dollar to have leads so they can call and try to scam you. So one way or another, if you guys are not doing something to keep yourself out of the pile of the scammy fraudsters, just don't make yourself a target for them. One of the easiest ways you can do it, it's some of these things like now, it's like $50 for the whole year. Divide that out across 12, it's dollars a month. And their discounts even going to work better. So again, it's patriot-protect.com/Kyle, and then just type in BF Black Friday 50. I found the icon. There it is on the screen. BF 50. Save half off on anything you guys want to buy. Do the annual. It'll default you to a monthly, but the annual is actually cheaper. You get a discount for that, and then you also get a discount right now during the Black Friday special. So check them out. If you guys have been on the fence on it, this is the time to kind of jump in and make that kind of thing happen. All right, let's do another frustrating story, and we're going to get right to this pipe bomb thing, and we're going to start with the frustrating story of this dollar amount. Again, unserious people doing unserious things, and here it is. This is another New York Times article. This is why my father-in-law knows a little bit about what's going on in our house. Patel under scrutiny for his use of SWAT teams to protect his girlfriend. That was covered by another article here, which I thought was also even funnier. And, oh no, what is this nonsense? They said he's enraged that the SWAT team left his girlfriend when she sang the national anthem and they decided she was safe at a sporting event. When I tell you that my frustration with the Trump administration is straightforward, they promised one thing, and then what they did is seemed like we want to be the people who rule over the ashes. We're just going to take as much money as possible, and I don't care whether you call it a con job or a grift or corruption or whatever you want to call it. The name is irrelevant to me. The attitude is like, I'm going to get mine, and screw you. The amount of significant disrespect that would have to pop up for you to be so entitled, feel you're so entitled to other people's money for your comfort simply because you want it, it escapes me completely. I can never understand. We found out that my father-in-law had a scenario where he sold his house, and apparently the attorney that helped him sell the house in New York, which apparently you need because it's New York, so it's commie, stole a six-figure amount of money from him. And then he had to threaten that person, and then that person sent the money back after a year. And then the attorney that was helping him get that money back sent him a bill, like a finder's fee. Where do these people come from? Where are these people that have absolutely no sense of ethics or scruples? And it turns out they seem very, very excited about being in the Northeast corridor, and they love getting into the halls of power. And so this story is just another great example of this. This is a story that we've covered. I think we broke this story, guys. I mean, I was talking about this months ago. We scooped the mainstream on it. The fact that Patel was using a security detail for his girlfriend, not wife, that's a big deal. And that he's been running around on the government jets after saying that it should be shut down. All of this stuff makes it go, okay, well, if you're lying about this, what other things are you lying about? That's where it comes down to for me. If you're lying, if you are so effortlessly lying to me about things that are really important, if your credibility is on the line the first minute you take office, you sit down in front of the Senate and you lie during your confirmation so you can run an agency where you fire people for lying, because lack of candor is the number one way you get out of federal law enforcement. How is it that we're ever supposed to take anything you say seriously? So all I do is I listen critically, like I did to the previous FBI director, and I spot the lies in the statements they give, because they're being very cautious so that they're walking on the right side of some sort of technical argument. He sat down for this interview. This is him being asked about the Thomas Crooks investigation, the potential assassination or the attempted assassination of today's president. And he claims Donald Trump is really happy about it. And at the same day, yesterday, we started seeing some rumblings from a pretty reputable source. Paul Sperry has some pretty good contacts in the Trump administration, claiming there might be some big shakeups. Allow me to just kind of give you guys the behind the scenes as best I understand it. The Trump administration has what's called a no scalp policy right now. In other words, they're not going to fire anybody. They're going to promote them to a place where they can't cause any problem. That used to be the way the FBI worked too, by the way. When I was there, it's like, oh, you suck. Let's find a place to put you so you don't mess anything up. And apparently that's been the Trump policy under Susie Wiles. We're not taking scalps. So we're not going to get rid of Pam Bondi, even if she's ineffective. We're not going to get rid of Patel or Bongino. We're not going to get rid of Mike Waltz. We're not going to get rid of these people. We're going to find them somewhere where they cannot screw anything up. That's the claim. So let's hear about this not screw up on an investigation which could have taken Donald Trump's life, but for the grace of God and maybe a quarter of an inch one way or another.
Catherine, we've been briefing the president constantly on this matter, and he's very satisfied with it. And I understand the public's desire for more and more information. But when we came in, our job was to both treat the president as the president of the United States and a victim, and remind the American public that there were 3 other victims, and tragically one person even lost his life. So there are certain victims' rights that we have to honor. But what we did and what we presented and what we released is the full findings that we are able to publicize to the world that definitively answer questions regarding Butler. We seized dozens and dozens of devices. We exploited and got into every single one of those devices. We got onto all the online platforms and social media sites of the assailant of Crooks. And we did a re-canvassing just to double down, since we got in and inherited this case. And we gave out information to Congress and the public that the prior administration refused to do.
Just to be clear, did Thomas Crooks act alone?
Yes, based on the evidence that we have, that is the conclusive finding of the matter.
That is the conclusive finding at this moment when we are in the consideration of the facts of the things that are available to me to review by the people who have briefed me on the time and the topic for which we are discussing. I had a real similar interaction with a guy on Donald Trump's first inauguration. He was shining a laser pointer into the Capitol or the Park Police helicopter. It was called Eagle One. And so me and my partner, who was a Secret Service, he was a plainclothes officer, not an agent. And he worked for the counter surveillance unit. And the two of us were walking around looking for troublemakers. That was just what we did. We made sure that nobody was going to abuse their First Amendment liberties and stop other people from being able to use their First Amendment liberties. So we're following around. We see this guy. We see the laser pointer go through this tree. It hits the Park Police helicopter, and I start following him. My partner gets on the phone. He calls up Secret Service, and he says, can we get clearance to do a probable cause-based arrest? We just saw this guy use the laser pointer. We've been hearing about it in the radio all day. It fits the same description. It's a green laser, which was very specific. We just saw him shine it into a police, squad car that was driving oncoming, and it hit the windshield, and you could actually see the windshield light up. It was real crazy. And so it's like, can we get this guy? And they said, yes. Bring him into custody. We're going to dispatch Park Police for transport. Fantastic. So we go into this little place. It's a like a falafel place. And it's up on K Street, if memory serves. I could probably find it on a map still. We follow this guy from the park into he goes into this restaurant, and he buys something, and he turns around and he's waiting for his food. And we both pop out our badges. Now we're wearing like hoodies, and like jeans. Like we don't look copish on purpose. We're doing plainclothes stuff. So we pop out the badge, hanging around the neck. He's got his badge out. My partner does. And we go, you're being detained. Come with us. We're federal agents. And the guy tries to like run past me, and he like runs into me, and I'm like, dude, and my beard was about an inch deeper, thicker. So I look kind of formidable. And I'm wearing puffy clothes. So we take him outside, we put him against the wall, and we're like, hey man, do you have a laser pointer on you? Did you just fire into that helicopter? And he goes, well, based on the advice of the needs of the attorneys and the probable cause to believe that the law of the application of direct energy towards the lighting system, which may be contained, he just starts saying nonsense, like a smoothie of words that he thought sounded litigious. And my partner's like, did you have a freaking law? And then like, and he frisks him for weapons. And of course he finds this huge, like lightsaber sized, D-cell battery sized laser pointer up his arm. And it's like, I knew you were lying because you started saying babbly gobbledygook nonsense. Patel does this every time. And what we've realized from listening to him is he's got a couple of tells. Number one, he says, would I be the guy that would hide this thing from you? The answer is obvious. Yes, that's what we're asking. Would you be the guy? You answer the question. Don't ask me the question. And the second thing that he does, which is also really interesting, is he gets these long-winded, sort of overly explanatory, nonsensical. It's what dumb people do when they are trying to lie to you and they try to say more words so you don't pay attention. And the last thing that I've seen him say is that whenever he covers, he always says the material that is available to us. Because Kash Patel knows nothing about how the FBI works, even though he's been the director for coming up on 9 months now. He doesn't know. Folks, I'll just tell you very conclusively, it's a long learning curve to learn how to handle the FBI's file keeping system and how to do power searches. It's not obvious. It's not intuitive. It's a crappy government system. And if you think that the man who's doing this interview, who's going out and doing this mouthpiece garbage and trying to claim that something is fine and that Donald Trump loves what he's doing and that he solved drugs and he solved murder, which is two things that they've made claims about, to claim that that is the case, it's disingenuous, because when you listen to their words, they always say, based on what we've been briefed, I didn't read the files. Every time he's under oath, he gets called out. And so I'm going to play some Tom Massie later on, who hones in on this exact thing. These guys do not know what is even in the FBI's file. They are getting briefed by people in the FBI. And I'm just going to ask you a real simple question. If you were in a government agency and you wanted to keep doing whatever shenanigans you were involved in, what would you do when two guys showed up who said that they were going to tear apart your agency? It's an open question. Would you say, like, we're going to get rid of you? Nah. Would you do like a sneer and do a cartoonish sort of thing as you saw them? Like, we'll see how long you last. Like, not if I have anything to say about it. Are you going to be that? Or are you going to walk up and kiss their ass immediately? Would you walk up to them and say, Mr. Patel, Director Patel, we're so glad you're here. There have been so many things that have been going wrong over the last, and we're so glad that you're here. You've been talking about it. We want to help you do the solution. And then meanwhile, what do? I'm just going to guide you right over here, you dummy. I'm going to get your trust. You're going to infiltrate. You're going to obfuscate. You're going to bubble wrap, which is what the word is. We're going to make sure that you do what we say, because we're going to provide you the information. Don't listen to those dissidents out there, those personality flawed, those character issue type guys. Don't listen to the whistleblowers that put everything on the line and lost their jobs because they thought what was going on here was malfeasance. And by the way, whose dicks you rode into the freaking office that you're in right now. Excuse my language, but that's what it is. You rode in on other people's hard work. And then you're going to give your girlfriend a security detail, fly around in a jet and make them do a reupholstery on it right away. You're going to get a whiskey bar installed. And you're going to be pissed off that Kyle Seraphin knows that your pilot was involved in the exact same investigations that you decried. And that's something. And then you run to a friendly outlet and you have these things to say. So we're going to keep doing those. We're going to talk about, how about the Charlie Kirk investigation? You remember how he got out in front of that and he immediately made it about himself? Director Valhalla. Remember that? We got burn bags, which they discovered, which are just trash. That's evidence that was waiting for me to find them. Who showed you where they were, dummy? Oh, people in the FBI, you think that they have your best interests at heart? They are making you look like a freaking buffoon. Maybe, just maybe, you should have walked in with a little bit of skepticism and trusted no one. Do you guys remember? Like, isn't that the first rule of the S-Files? Trust no one. Why? Because everybody had an agenda and they were all trying to move you around. We're going to get into that in a second. I'm going to go and play you some Tom Massie stuff. All of the next, like maybe 15 or 20 minutes is going to be, I think, very revealing. And I'm going to give you names. I'm going to give you specifically a name that is not being mentioned and is a real problem. Before we do it, check out my friends over at Silent. Right now, they've got a Black Friday special running as well. The way to get there is to go to silent.com. That's SLNT.com/Kyle. Okay, your phone's a tracking device, your tablet's a tracking device, all of your different connectivity devices, they're all tracking devices. Government agencies and big tech and corporate data brokers and criminals and scumbags and Kash Patel's people can all track you on those things. If you want to put them into a bag to make them go completely silent and disappear, check out slnt.com/KYLE. On any normal order, you'll save 15%. If you want to save a little bit more, they have codes like Holiday 20 and Holiday 25 based on the amount of money you spend. You can save up to 25% right now. This is their big sale of the year, which a lot of people do on this Black Friday. They're starting it already. So as you go to the website, you'll see on the right-hand side, it pops up and you can get a couple of other promo codes, which will help you save even more money. These are not cheap items. Somebody made a comment about that the other day. They're not cheap. They're well made. It makes a difference. You buy the cheap stuff, they fail. Just trust me. We did this in the Bureau. We bought all the cheap crap and they all fell apart. These things have high functionality. They are well designed. They are not cheap solutions. They are good solutions, which is a difference. And sometimes you got to pay for that. Good company, good equipment, stuff that I wish I had been using when I was on the job. I used tinfoil and an ammo can. You look like a complete psycho pulling that out and taking your burner phone out from the back of your trunk like that. You had to go and find a parking garage. If you guys want to be able to use something that nobody's going to notice, something that's just a little bit convenient and it's sleek looking, you could even have it at your meeting. If you don't want a meeting spied on by God knows who's accessing your phone, which could be anybody, honestly, slnt.com/KYLE. Check out their Faraday sleeves, their Faraday backpacks. You're seeing the E3 Everyday Faraday. I've got that one sitting behind me. It's my Riot deployment gear. They make really good stuff. So you won't be sad about anything that I've seen. I touched all their products at SHOT Show, which you guys saw me at there, and all the stuff they have is just, it's nice. And that's not always the case. Things that are made, they make them overseas, but they make them to the same standards and they make stuff here domestically as well. So if you need a Berry compliant thing, they've got that covered. All right, we're going to continue onward with this wild story. And the story is wild in so much as we are being lied to our face and we are having somebody who should have known better, who's getting lies to himself. Now he's regurgitating the lies. That's why I have such a problem with it. All right, let's do the Charlie Kirk question. What's going on there? How come you haven't shared any more information? The answer is they never should have shared as much as they did. For all of you people that are doing amateur sleuth investigations, for the Candace Owens loonies out there, and by the way, she's nuts. I've been listening to some of the new things. Nobody can substantiate it, but apparently the French president is using a Jewish sniper in the Foreign Legion to come after her. Okay. Like, people, at some point in time, somebody's got to give you some evidence. The fact of the matter is the FBI should have never given you as much as they did. The only reason they did is because Kash Patel was thirsty, which is what that looks like. He's used to doing stay tuned, which we're going to hear in a second. And he's always like trying to catch more attention and say, this FBI, I need a win. And he was so desperate for a win that he actually screwed this up and he claimed that they caught the subject before they did. That's how much this guy wants positive attention and spin. He's willing to screw it up. So here's his question about that, and you guys will see this from the sit-down interview with Captain Harris.
On the Charlie Kirk assassination investigation, you testified recently that more than 20 people were on the Discord chat related to the suspect, Tyler Robinson. Mm-hmm. Have you spoken to those people? Is it now a larger universe of 20 people?
Well, so with the Charlie case, it's a matter that is being led by the state authorities in Utah because it is a homicide investigation that is being prosecuted by the state. So us as the FBI are partners and part of that prosecution team. We're not the lead, and it's very much ongoing. So there is a lot of legal process being doled out, and we are committed to issuing every piece of legal process and search warrant that we can to talk to absolutely everyone and anyone who had anything to do with the assassination of my friend. And we're going to continue to do that and also honor the prosecutor's wishes in how we do that and what we release publicly.
Respecting that it is an ongoing investigation, is there any evidence of foreign involvement? Is there any evidence that Tyler Robinson had help?
Again, that will be spoken through by the prosecutors. If I, as the FBI director, commented on that right now in any way, shape, or form, that would hurt their case. And the worst thing that can happen is the individual who's charged and has his day in court down the road is if we, the FBI, or another law enforcement agency improperly commented on evidence and gave the defense an unfair advantage.
This would have been the right answer right after it happened. But now it's ridiculous. You've inserted yourself in. The only answer you should have said is, I've actually recused myself completely from that investigation because he was my friend. And I can't have anything to do with it, both by DOJ and FBI policy and basically standard law enforcement policy across the country. I've recused myself. I am not getting updates on this case, and you'll have to talk to somebody else. I refer you to the state of Utah where the prosecution is happening and the local law enforcement that has the lead. The difference is he claimed that they were the lead. He's gone out in interviews in the last 45 days and said, I led a nationwide manhunt and I found the guy in record time and I'm so awesome. Dude, screw you. We have the tapes. We know what a lying sack of garbage you are. We can look you right in the eyes. Yeah, I'm doing the hand thing. We know that what you've done is contrary to that. Now, maybe you finally got some good legal advice, which is great. But the legal advice should have been, shut the F up. This is not your story to comment on. And so the answer is, I cannot comment because I've recused myself. Or you could spend a bunch of BS for like 90 seconds to 2 minutes and hope that we believe you, like some teenager that's caught in a trap. Hey, were you hanging out with your friend Marcus the other day? Well, when I was out there, and then so then Julie called, and then we were doing this, and we drove over to the 7-Eleven, and when I was at the 7-Eleven, because like Andy's dad, it's like, shut up, stop lying to us. Every time I see this gaslighting garbage, the thing that drives me absolutely bonkers is then I go and find that there's somebody online going like, this is what I voted for. So great. Or we get the official cover story, which comes from this lady. Julie Kelly was like, amazing. Kash Patel announces new information is coming soon. Julie Kelly. Some of you guys need to do some of your research on this. This is really fun for you. This is the Genetic Literacy Project. Science, not ideology. Funded by Monsanto. Funded by a $100,000 grant from the Bayer Aspirin Company, which owns Monsanto. I think I'm getting my numbers right there. Don't sue me on that. That is my honest belief that what I'm saying there is correct. This is her viewpoint. The anti-GMO movement and the label demands are losing steam under this Republican administration. That was in August of 2017. Can consumers really credibly rely on USDA organic labels? June 2017. Remember the food blogger turned January 6th awesome person? The pipe bomb expert? Why is she a pipe bomb expert? I don't know. Her expertise apparently was in debunking the science of organic foods and going out and talking about how great it is that people use GMO, genetically modified organisms, in their foods. FOIA, organic industry, Chuck Benbrook, orchestrated an anti-GMO independent research, air quotes, kind of like whistleblower in air quotes, marketing. That's in October of 2015. This is why Whole Foods and Chipotle's anti-GMO campaigning has lost my business. Julie Kelly's no longer going to Chipotle or Whole Foods. 2015. Hollywood celebrities embrace pseudoscience and they produce anti-GMO movie. Pro-GMO marchers are shocked and unfocused with their anger at the march against Monsanto. 2015. Yeah, like no joke. She legitimately posted a picture of herself standing around a bunch of people who were marching against pesticides on food and wrote, I feed my kids GMOs. Why would she do that? Why is this the lady who's also carrying water? And this is why when I say that we don't actually deserve better psyops, it's because people just don't actually look into it. I'll only bring this up because this was covered by this woman. She went on and tried to run cover for the FBI's story about the pipe bomb, trying to debunk the work of Steve Baker, and we're going to cover that in just 1 second. So this is completely related to it, I promise you. But you wonder, like, why on earth does this woman go out there and back things like Monsanto and GMO foods? Maybe it's because her husband owns this. This is Allcirco's valued clients. Some of Allcirco's valued clients include Archer Daniels Midland. That's literally the first company that they list. I assume that's their biggest client. And there they are in the alphabetical order. Archer Daniels Midland Company. If we want to talk about a swampy experience, Allcirco is the lobbying company that is owned by Julie Kelly's husband. Allcirco has an inked deal going back to 2016 with Ballard Partnership. And Ballard Partners is the place that employed Susie Wiles and Pam Bondi and represented Qatar in the United States and a bunch of other interesting swampy things. This is the top Democrat lobbying firm in the city of Chicago in the state of Illinois. And their founder and their president's wife, Julie Kelly, used to do pro-Monsanto stuff, and now she's working on like discrediting people who are doing work on the January 6th space and talking about the pipe bomber. For those of you that don't know about Archer Daniels Midland, it apparently is an $85.5 billion a year total revenue company, nearly $100 billion. It is ranked 35 on the Fortune 50 in the year 2023. It is a massive corporation that you don't know anything about, most of you. And so you wonder, oh, well, what do they do? Why would she be out there touting these things? I'm only telling you that you can look into the motives of people and then realize that their behavior aligns with it. What are their products? They include oils and meal from soybeans and cotton seeds and sunflower seeds and canola and peanuts and flax seeds and palm kernel and dag oil, whatever the hell that is, and corn germ and so on and so forth. They're interested in moving things like high fructose corn syrup and sweeteners and chocolate and ethanol and wheat flour and crystalline dextrose and all these other things that are processed. What else do? They do oil seeds processing. Oh, wait, Julie Kelly is a beneficiary of a company that pays her husband millions of dollars a year to do what? To represent their seed oil production? What about their corn processing? No wonder she loves GMOs. They pay her bills. They do agricultural services and grain transportation. And they have a global transport network and port operations to buy, store, clean, and transport agricultural commodities. I'm just reading from their Wikipedia here, folks. Do they have any scandals? Of course they do. They have scandals here that were brought to the Justice Department going back to 1920, it looks like. They had price fixing issues in 1993. There was some sort of an issue where the senior ADM executives were indicted on criminal charges for price fixing. They've got tax dodging things here in light of something that happened in Argentina in 2011. You've got a violation of the Corrupt Foreign Practices Act that involved Ukraine in 2013. They had another company that pled guilty and they agreed to pay a huge fine. ADM apparently paid like $36 million to settle SEC charges. They apparently potentially corruptly gave a very, very sweetheart land deal to the Secretary of Agriculture in 2017. That would have been under Trump, as I understand it. They sold land at a fraction of the estimated value, which the ethics department decided could have amounted to a bribe. And they had some questionable accounting practices. In 2023, 7 of the top executives received shares worth $72 million for exceeding their performance metrics. In 2024, they disclosed that the SEC requested information regarding these accounting practices on intersegment transactions. It's all very litigious and boring. Okay? This is one of the people who's running cover on it. Again, I'm telling you this because here it is. She got really mad. She went on the story with Viva Frei. Viva Frei rather. David did a really nice interview where he said, go ahead and defend your position. You invited yourself on my podcast to cover the story of the J6 pipe bomber. Tell me what's up. And she hung herself with all the things because she's a propagandist. And propaganda doesn't work when you actually have someone who's a legitimate skeptic. That's not what happened in this Kash Patel interview. He just got nonstop. Oh, okay. What you're saying is great. Would you like an update on the pipe bomber from the Catherine Herridge interview? I would. Let's see what Kash Patel has to say. Remember, just a couple of weeks ago, he said, stay tuned, because he's still doing podcast stuff. So are we going to get something better? I'm sure we are.
In a recent cable news interview with Fox, you said to stay tuned about the January 6th pipe bomber case. Are there new developments we can discuss?
There are new developments. Can we discuss them? Not at this time, but I think you'll be hearing from us soon on it.
Are you closer to making an arrest?
When we took over the FBI, we knew there was a renewed interest in a lot of cases of great public importance. And of course, this one, where it was alleged that someone went to the United States Capitol grounds and planted a bomb to possibly blow up then Vice President Kamala Harris or other Republicans and other Democrats on Capitol Hill, was one we felt important enough to redouble our investigative tactics. And that's what we've done. And like we did in the Comey case, when we made presentations in court, when the American public finds out the presentations we will be making, if we get to a judicial decision, then they will see how much was missed in this case. And what we have done, and I hope the American public will realize, our commitment to putting out as much information as we can, when we can, on cases of great public importance.
It's been a lot.
That is amazing. So basically, no. So basically, you got nothing, but you'll give it to us when you can. What about addressing the Blaze story? Or do you just want to send your paid propagandist out there? Here's your propagandist. This is Julie Kelly's FEC individual contributions. Much has been questioned about this, mostly by me. Nobody seems to want to ask that question. Top line, Julie C. Kelly, Biden for president, state of Illinois, 12/17/2019, while she was in the middle of writing a book about Donald Trump. $2,800, hard money donation, straight to Joe Biden, which resulted in what? Oh, the Biden administration coming in and doing what they did. I'm just saying, we have the propagandists that we deserve. The record is pretty clear. And if you don't want to do any sort of just normal digging and asking questions, if we can't get journalists to go out there and say, hey, yeah, so we heard that, but there's a big story that was broken by the Blaze. Can you comment on that specifically? Well, it turns out somebody is willing to comment on it, and that somebody is Tom Massie. So let's play that. Tom Massie sat down with my buddy Steve Baker. It's a 90-minute interview. It's a little bit much for most of you. I think it's a little bit much for me, to be fair. I had to cut through it and find out what I wanted to hear specifically. These are the things I think are the most important parts of that 90 minutes, and I can give it to you in a much shorter time frame. Before we do it, let me just real quickly, I'll let you know that we're over on Spotify. If you guys want to listen on there, if you're on the audio and you can't see and you'd like to, join us on Spotify at KyleSerafinshow.com. You may hear a Spotify ad right now. That's one of the ways we pay the bills. Otherwise, if you're on Rumble, on YouTube, on X, if you're on Locals, Consider being a supporter. Consider subscribing to the channels there, subscribing to the handle, if you will, and then making sure that you like and you are notifying yourself when these things go live. We go live at 9:30 Eastern time on weekdays, except for the rest of this week because I'm taking it off. This is too much. Again, KyleSerafinshow.com. Very easy to find. Let's do Tom Massie. Here we go. What did he find?
We have reason to believe that a small set of Capitol Hill police officers may have been involved in a pipe bomb conspiracy on January 6th. There's so many problems with that story too.
Including the preservation request had gone in days in advance before.
Right.
That, so.
Yeah, the preservation request wasn't 40 minutes before,
Right.
as the telecom company claims. It was days before.
Right.
So who knows what to believe there? But D'Antuono should have known more than he did when he told me it was corrupted, right? He could have explained something about that. But this is from page 68 of the report that Loudermilk and I put out at the end of last Congress. By early February 2021, the FBI identified, quote, 186 phone numbers of interest derived from the FBI's analysis of the redacted geofence and cell tower dumps, unquote. According to an internal document obtained by the subcommittee, 36 of these phone numbers were assigned to agents for interviews. 98 of these phone numbers required additional investigative steps, and, wait for it, 51 of these phone numbers were identified as, quote, not needing further action, unquote, because the phones, quote, belong to law enforcement officers or persons on the exclusion list, unquote.
Exclusion list.
51 people were not, their phones weren't tracked or investigated because they were either police officers or on an exclusion list.
That seems pretty problematic, doesn't it? Shouldn't that be the thing? If you guys are curious, it came from this page right here. We've shown it on the screen before. This is not news to you who listen to this podcast. But if you're new here today, welcome to the program. By early February 21, these are the breakdowns. 186 phone numbers, 36 are the ones they actually followed up on for interviews. 98 went back to the analysts for additional investigative steps. 51 were excluded because they were law enforcement or considered exclusionary. What's really wild about that report that you hear Massie reference, and this is not something that I heard him say in that interview, there are 14 specific times when the word unclear is used. I'm going to give you a couple of quick examples. These are just 3 of the times. The FBI continued analyzing large data sets from carriers, and certain devices exhibited behavior consistent with the suspect. For example, in April of 2021, the case team identified blank user who was in the area of Washington, D.C. at the time that the suspect can be seen on video footage using their phone, blah, 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 blah. The case team was attempting to further analyze the user's movements. It is ultimately unclear what happened with respect to this lead. They apparently have had access to the case file, but it's ultimately unclear what happened. On this one, they determined the chemical components of the black powder found inside the pipe bomb device. The FBI attempted to contact stores and commercial distributors, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It remains unclear whether the FBI was successful in identifying further persons of interest using this particular information. That's another example of it. In addition to analyzing the pipe bombs, the FBI publicly released information describing both pipe bombs as quote-unquote viable. However, given that the suspect used a 60-minute timer and 16 hours lapsed between the time of placement and discovery, it remains unclear whether the pipe bombs were actually capable of detonating on January the 6th. To date, the FBI has refused to provide additional information on the pipe bomb viability. They've never addressed the viability question. That's something that could be easily done. They've actually released the reports and then said, you figure it out, dummy. We don't use any specific words like viability, legitimacy, genuine, capability. They don't say that other than in the right combinations, these things could do something, but we didn't say whether or not they're in the right combinations. This has always been a cover-up from day one. Massie's honing in on this, and part of the problem continues to be the current FBI. And he hits the nail on the head, which I've been telling you on this program, and I'm not trying to toot the horn. I'm just saying I can read between the lines, and you should too. Tom Massie has identified the same problem that I have seen. The guys that are running these agencies are taking the word of the people that have been in these agencies instead of the people that were the dissidents and said, there's a real problem and the reason why they are actually there in the first place. If you think Kash Patel ends up as the FBI director without the outrage and the outcry and the whistleblower actions and the loud and public cases that I and others have helped explain to the American people were problematic before Donald Trump came in, I think you're nuts. Think about the things that you think the FBI has gone and done wrong in the last, let's call it 5-6 years. Oh, they were spying on Catholics. That was me. Oh, they were spying on parents at school board meetings. That was also me, right? Oh, they set people up and then they do these fake put up jobs and entrapment cases. I've said that very publicly as well, and I've given details and I've given examples, and I can name you the cases that I worked on that were like that, and I found out after the fact what they had done. All this stuff is really wild because all of that would make you go in there, I would think, and you would be immediately distrustful. You would look at them and say, you're part of this team that has been lying. So my first question to everybody would have been, what is your first responsibility as a law enforcement officer in the United States working under the Constitution? That'd be number one. And then I would say, what whistleblower actions have you taken, defined as bringing a problem with violations of policy, rule, or law, or gross danger to the public? What have you done that constitutes a whistleblowing action? And if you don't have one that you brought to your management, you brought to somebody in the Office of General Counsel, you brought to the Office of the Inspector General, if you did not bring them to an outside agency over at DOJ, or you did not bring them to a United States Congress member, then what, why, and how should you even consider me thinking of trusting you? What would make you think that I would ever trust you if you can't even raise the alarm when you've seen something bad? Or if your claim is, I've never seen anything bad happen in the FBI, then you are immediately a problem too. That means that your head's down either in the sand or in the dark place that sits behind your butt cheeks. Here's Tom Massie saying the most obvious thing in the world. Why would you listen to these people?
Again, for the listeners, I'm on the Judiciary Committee, so I get 5 minutes with people like Christopher Wray or ATF Director Dettelbach, who I asked about the pipe bombs
Exactly.
too. And Merrick Garland, who I asked about Ray Epps. I'm the guy who asked a question
Right.
that everybody's afraid to ask because they're afraid to look stupid. But I asked Kash Patel here just recently, the day before he had testified to the Senate, that Epstein, even though there were 1,000 victims, that Epstein was the only perpetrator.
Right.
And so the next day he came to House Judiciary, and I said, well, the victims, which we prefer to call survivors, the ones who are still alive, the survivors tell me that you guys have at least 20 names. And I don't have I told him one of the names, Jess Staley,
right,
who's the CEO. I said, but there's 19 other names, 6 of them are billionaires. One's a movie producer. We're not just making these up. You can go find these people in your files. And have you seen anything in your files? No. Well, I said, what about the 302 forms, the FD 302, which you've already referenced? Because the survivors know that the FBI memorializes these interviews in these 302 forms. And so, have you looked at the 302 forms? And he said, no.
Right.
And I said, well, how can you testify that there's nobody that's done any crimes or any reasonable leads to follow? And he said, well, I trust the people that work for me. Well, that's a problem. If we trusted the people that were working there, Joe Biden would still be president, right? Or Kamala Harris.
Isn't that just it? And haven't I been telling you guys this? They trust the people that work there. Are they the world's dumbest, most trusting dupes? Maybe so. Maybe they were so desperate to be liked that that's what they decided was reasonable. He said the same damn thing. This is Dan Bongino saying the same damn thing when he went out and did an interview. We've been briefed. Listen to the words. Not we went and looked at the files. We looked at the firsthand accounts and decided what was BS or not. We have been briefed on every tendril and nugget and detail. There are no nuggets in FBI case files. There are no tendrils. I don't know what a tendril of a file is, but that's not there either. And the details got briefed by someone who told you what they wanted you to know and not the alternative. Guys, it's so easy. You're being played, and we can see it from the outside. How can you not? You astute observers. Podcast Dan and Podcast Kash would lose their ever-loving minds about this stuff.
You know what, Maria? Kash is not kidding. We've been personally briefed extensively on every single detail, nugget, tendril of this case. One is actively in court right now, so out of respect for the case, it's probably more appropriate that I stay quiet on that. However, I'm not going to tell people what they want to hear. I'm going to tell you the truth, and whether you like it or not is up to you. If there was a big explosive there, right? Given my history as a Secret Service agent.
Listen, you know me. Would I say things that are false? Only if I didn't know anything else. Do I know anything else? No. Did I go look at the files myself? Also no. I let someone brief me, and there are no tendrils or nuggets. What are we doing here? and do we recommend that whistleblowers come forward? I don't. That's a really good way to get hunted. Ask me how I know. I had my boss come to me a couple of days after I met with a member of Congress, and he said, "You're a whistleblower, right?" Question in the affirmative. And I was like, well, I'm not going to get fired for lying to my boss, even though I'm not under oath. But I'm pretty sure he's not supposed to ask me that. He's not, by the way. The members of Congress don't know what to do with that information. I was inexperienced. I know more now. So I can send people that want to give me information. I go, don't give it to me. Give it to an attorney who's going to give it to people that will make it go to the right places. Get it to the right Congress members. Here's Tom Massie talking about a whistleblower coming to him about the pipe bomb case.
So I received a whistleblower disclosure after your story came out a week or two ago.
Right.
From a current FBI employee. And it's a protected disclosure under U.S. statutes. They can't go after him for disclosing this to a member of Congress. And he chose me, and actually Barry Loudermilk, to make this disclosure to. And his concern was that the investigation that went to Falls Church, Virginia, that got them to the doorstep of the person that you identified through gate analysis as possibly somebody that might have been the person in the hood. He said there were leads to follow. There were suggestions made to the people in charge of the investigation about how to follow up on those leads. And it was just dropped after 2 days of surveillance. And he provided supporting documents to that effect. Well, Dan Bongino, I retweeted your story, and I was in an airport, and Dan Bongino called me. I was about to get on a plane, but I spent 10 minutes talking to him before I boarded. And he said, that's a dead lead. We investigated.
That's a dead lead. I got briefed that we did everything we were supposed to do. So don't believe your lying eyes and don't look at a whistleblower disclosure. And by the way, we're watching you. You guys ready to hear this? Because this is where the real nuggets drop. I'm looking over. I see we got 700 people watching live on YouTube right now. That's a record number for us over there. So thanks for joining us. YouTube, make sure you guys hit the like button. We'd appreciate it if you did that. Okay, here's the deal. Somebody reached out and let Tom Massie know two things. Number one, the FBI was considering prosecuting, investigating, and coming after members of his staff for what's going on, for what he's doing right now, for the problems he's causing for the Trump administration or for the FBI. And the second thing is they sort of accidentally, or maybe explicitly, let him know that they're monitoring his movements. This is the game we're playing right now. When I've told you that I was pretty confident that I had a surveillance team follow me when I flew from Austin to go move my family out of my last FBI duty location, which was in Las Cruces, New Mexico, I'm pretty sure I did have a surveillance team. Well, what's my examples? I can't show it to you. I didn't take pictures of them at the time, but I used to do that for a living. And I know how to draw out surveillance, it turns out. Like one of the things you learn about being surveillance is learn how to track surveillance and how to pull it out. And what are the traps that catch you? What are the things that are called SDRs, surveillance detection routes? How do you do those? That doesn't mean that I go do some crazy stuff and then like people are like, oh, no, it means I covertly lure you into exposing yourself. And sometimes people tell you because they want to threaten you. And sometimes people accidentally drop information on you when they don't realize that they're revealing more than they should. This next two little clips from this interview with Baker and Tom Massie are very revealing. And I'm going to name the name that they do not.
So Bongino did tell me, look, tomorrow we're going to round up everybody that was involved in this investigation. We're going to get them all in a room. We're going to get to the bottom of it. And he didn't say we're trying to find the whistleblower. No. But my spidey sense went off, and I almost said to him in that moment, you better not be trying to find the whistleblower.
Right.
Because law protects that individual. But I didn't say it. Okay. Also, I'm going to say this here on camera because it's important. One of Kash Patel's staff threatened my staff with a criminal investigation if we didn't straighten up and play ball.
I was going to ask you about that, but since you brought it up, and I didn't
I'm bringing it up.
Okay, you brought it up.
And so, like a criminal investigation having nothing to do, he said it was going to be a fraud. We're going to investigate one of your staff for fraud. Right. And he told another one of my staff this. If you guys don't straighten up, if you want to play hardball, if this is how you want to play it or something like that, this member of your staff is going to get criminally investigated for fraud. A very specific threat.
Right.
And that had just happened. So I told Bongino, I said, one of your guys is threatening my guys with an FBI investigation if we don't do what you want.
That guy's name is Marshall Yates, and he's the assistant director of the Office of Congressional Affairs, and he's been serving in the FBI since March 14th of 2025. This is their press release announcing him being named. Kash Patel named him, and it's not just that. He's now the assistant director, which is a SES position inside the Bureau that has been held by FBI agents and FBI employees, and not by random dudes. As far as I know, going back all the way. Prior to his appointment with the FBI, Mr. Yates worked in various roles as a lawyer on Capitol Hill. He moved to Washington, D.C. in 2015 to serve as a legislative counsel to Congressman Mo Brooks, Alabama 5th. In 2020, he was promoted to the chief of staff for Congressman Brooks. In 2023, Mr. Yates was hired by Congressman Tom Massie to serve as the associate counsel on the House Rules Committee and as counsel on the chair as the Judiciary Subcommittee on Antitrust, Regulatory Reform, Administrative State. Mr. Yates went to Auburn, graduated in 2011. He was a member of the Hillsdale College James Madison Fellowship Class of 2022-2023. That's who's threatening Tom Massie's people. This is not coming from somewhere else. This is coming from a guy who actually used to work for Massie himself, Marshall Yates. And you can see right there, this is his Legistorm. If you guys are not familiar with this website, it categorizes who is being paid on the public payroll. Marshall A. Yates, married to Mary G. Ducey. Okay. 2023 to 2025, he was working for Tom Massie. Before that, the Election Integrity Network. Then Mo Brooks, Senate Judiciary Committee, and then a state senator before that. Why is this guy who just joined the FBI, who, by the way, was Tom Massie's pipe bomb expert, as I'm told, on this case, why is he now calling back into his former office and threatening people that he used to work with? It seems important to know. Here's another little discussion about it.
This is probably, I may never get a chance to go into all this in the same forum at once, so I'm going to say this too. When I hopped that plane to come see you, I think it was on a Friday.
It was.
I'm on the plane and I got a text from that individual at the FBI who I've not talked to in months. And he said, I need to talk to you. And I said, I'm on a plane, I can't talk. And he said, yeah, I heard you were coming to DC. Now, the interesting thing about that is I didn't even tell my own staff where I was going. Now, obviously, I had to buy some plane tickets, and it was on my calendar.
It was very last minute, actually.
It's like,
yeah,
you were like, are you coming or not? And I'm like, well, I'm not sure if I can make it. This was like 3 or 4 hours before I got on the plane is when I got the ticket.
Right.
And somehow this person who I've not talked to for months wants to talk to me all of a sudden, and had heard that I was coming to D.C. I mean, I didn't even tell my own kids I was going to D.C.
Right.
Anyways.
That's disconcerting.
I have to put that out there.
Yeah.
Because if a turtle gets on a fence post, usually it didn't get there by itself.
Right.
So Marshall Yates reaches out to Massie last minute when he books a last minute flight to go to DC to sit down to talk to Steve Baker about this pipe bomber case. And he gets a call from the assistant director for the Office of Congressional Affairs in the FBI, who took that job, who used to work for him, and says, heard you're coming to DC. That's a classic Fed move, isn't it? And Marshall Yates, who just got that job, who's married to Mary Ducey, who I guess has a brother-in-law. Who's his brother-in-law? There he is. That's Mary's brother. So that's the brother-in-law of Marshall Yates. Peter Ducey. You guys know him. Son of Steve Ducey. Oh, they all just work together in that swamp. And everybody's got an agreed agenda, and nobody's going to say the name, and you're safe because you're a protected person, and we won't say what your name is. We're upset with what you're up to. But we're not going to do anything about it. We want you to know that you shouldn't do that, but we're not going to say who you are. I'll say who you are. There you are. I know Marshall Yates has been doing a lot of behind-the-scenes movements, and he's been calling and threatening people, not just Massie's staff members. We're going to leave it at that for now. But that is not the first. That is not the first instance of people inside the 7th floor of the FBI's Hoover building reaching out and trying to flex power on the independent press and on the independent power of the legislator, the Article 1 powers. This is a real issue. If you're going to start threatening people with investigations, if you're going to start dropping little hints like, hey, by the way, we're monitoring you. We're tracking you. We knew where you were going to be. Why don't you stop and talk to us while you're here? Even though you're not coming here for that. And we never asked you if you were coming nearby. We got a real problem right now in this country. We've got people that are not working on our behalf, and it is becoming more and more obvious. And remember, stay tuned. We'll give you more information soon. The people that are giving you the information are the ones that are actually in the crosshairs of this and that and the same. They're all the same. Federal government. It hasn't changed. My buddy went out and pointed something out to me the other day. I wanted to leave you with this thought. The way that the federal government does business is administrative law and the federal registry. Feel free to query yourself. There are about 25% less administrative rulings on the federal registry in 2025 than there were in 2021. When the Biden administration got in, they got to business and they made the government work for them through boring, litigious administrative policies that get put out in the federal registry to the tune of 25% more. It's like 4,000 or 5,000 more regulations were passed in the first year of the Biden administration. Trump is like 3 out of 4 getting there. There's like 18,000 to 23,000 or something to that effect. It's a massive difference. And what it says to me is the people who came in to quote unquote reform, rather than cutting with a machete all of this ugly stuff, they've just been playing ball and getting fed briefings and being told by people that we trust everything is going to be fine. Meanwhile, if they were fine, then why did we need to have a new president? Why did we have an election in the first place if the same damn people are going to be doing the same thing? And there's no good answer to this. And there's no good way that you walk away from it and go like, oh, well, that's fine. We don't get to vote our way out of something like this. It doesn't mean it has to be violent, but I don't think you get to vote it out. I think we need the same thing I said a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago. We need these states to start recognizing that the enemy is the federal government, that the functional unit of our republic, our constitutional republic, is the state. And that the Commerce Clause does not give you writ large, authority to come out there and run every aspect of our life from the federal side. We need to have a 10th Amendment that actually means something. It has to. Because there should not be a time when we look and say this. Here's the good news of your day. Gas prices are near the lowest price in 4 years. Thanksgiving. Oh, the energy department is doing a good job. Oklahoma has the lowest price in the nation. It's $2.50 a gallon on average. Hooray. You can fill up your truck. It's cheaper. It's actually not cheaper where I live. I don't know why they're saying that. It was like $3.39 a gallon for diesel, which is about 50 cents higher than it's been in the last month. So whatever. It's going to be cheaper for some people. But that means that the energy department is doing a decent job. Well, what that tells me is that gas prices where I live are somehow directly tied to something that is going on in Washington, D.C., which is completely illogical. It makes absolutely no sense. And why the federal government has any say in this, the stuff that they're out there talking about is refinement capacity, the policy coming out of the Department of Energy. If these things can change what gas prices look like in my little grocery store gas station, why? Why is the federal government so involved? It was never meant to be like this. That is not what we signed up for. That's not the way our country is decided. But luckily, there's your good news. You guys want some good news before we go to Thanksgiving. In the meantime, I'm still really grateful for a bunch of things, which is that we have an independent ability to share information with you. There are people that are pushing back. There are people who actually see it. And I'm going to go all down and say this again, too. I'm not a big fan of Marjorie Taylor Greene, but I watched her resign the other day, and I think she picked the winning team, which is to say she got off the losing team. We're going to see a bloodbath in the midterms because the guys who showed up didn't show up seriously, and they took briefings from people who had a vested interest in beclowning them. And you don't know the names of the briefers, but you do know the names of the guys who just got screwed over. So whether you like them or you trust them or you thought they were going to go, it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter what you wanted. The fact of the matter is, stay tuned. More coming. We're not going to talk about this. We already blew it, but now we're going to say some more things. Apparently, Thomas Crooks acted completely alone. The pipe bomber is too mysterious for us to crack after 5 years, right? And we're going to let people like Candace Owens spin nonsense out there because we did a terrible job of giving you too much information, but not enough for you to actually see the actual prosecuted case. It's so goofy that we're living in this timeline. And again, all of you feel the same thing. I saw people in the chat say it earlier. There is a significant amount of discomfort with the stability of this nation. And if you're tuned in, and I'm way too tuned in to be happy, which is why I'm hoping I can unplug for a couple of days. If you are that tuned in, you realize that it's just on this razor edge. And if you go talk to a random person on the street, they probably feel like something is strange. Government shutdown, SNAP benefit, like some part of it has affected them. And at the same time, they don't actually realize that the problem is pervasive. It's 100 years of coming to this climax point, and it's not going to get voted out of because the votes you get always go back to people in the same system. And that's actually kind of a heartening thing. If you can recognize the problem, you can actually find the solution. I think you can find the solution. We need to really look at our states to start solving problems. I'm not sure I care about federal elections. I'm going to cover federal politics only because it's like looking at a train wreck in slow motion. But what I really do care about is knowing that our states need to start solving these problems and that congressional districts are changed by a few votes. And maybe you can actually ask your congressperson to represent you and not a party. And if not, those are the people that we should be getting behind. The people that understand that they're supposed to answer to the constituents, not to like Mike Johnson and his fake promises as long as he gets a little bit more power. So I hope all of you guys have a fantastic Thanksgiving. I'm going to announce either on Locals or X, probably both, whether we're going to do a call-in show tonight where you guys can just talk about the things you're grateful for. We might do that first thing in the morning tomorrow during the regular hour. It may not be a bad idea. We'll just open the phone line up. I'll put the phone on the screen. You guys call in. We'll take your thoughts. You get 60, 90 seconds, something like that to share the things that you're thankful for so we can have a really positive thought. There are days that we should step away from politics and from sort of the doom and gloom, which I don't think we can get away from it, but we can at least remember why it matters. And the contrast would be the things that are good. And there are plenty of things that are good, and I deal with them every day. So as people who reach out to me and they're like, "Are you all right? Like, are you mad?" Like, no, I go and hug my kids after this, and I'm going to be fine. I'm always mad, like the Hulk, like you should be. It doesn't mean it affects the way that your day goes. And then maybe we'll even have a call in from one of our buddies who could explain their love of turkey, which I do not share, versus the superior meat product, which is like a good steak. All right. On that thought, I'm going to leave you with no palate cleanse, but the lure of a call-in show either tonight or tomorrow where we can share some nice thoughts with each other And I appreciate all of you that are in the chat. I'm going to put you guys on the screen right there. For those of you that are listening, if you haven't seen what our chat looks like, it's an easy way to see it by going over on Spotify. You will see the voluminous number of messages that come in. They come in every second or two for the entire time that I am on this live broadcast. And it gets shared out, and we categorize it. Sometimes I go back and watch the shows after the fact, folks, and I see your comments, which I didn't see in the moment. And I'm like, that's funny. We have a really funny group of people that show up and listen to us live. And so I'm grateful for all of you very specifically. And I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. And I look forward to hearing from you in our call-in show that we do very shortly. All right. God bless you. Have a good rest of this day, whatever's left, and talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram @Kyle Seraphin.